class. She went to Qalam to study. You'll know when you see her.
So the wedding is in Atlanta? Oh, what a coincidence. No,
Thanksgiving weekend.
it's on October 16th. So when we used to live in Atlanta, the one my in-laws who we used to stay with, the grandfather passed away yesterday.
Allah yarham.
So goes to say. You know Shahin and this?
I do a barnamij, right? Isn't there like a dawra coming up?
Yeah, it was already yesterday. It ended yesterday. So our ustad has an ijazah.
MashaAllah.
You know?
It's not even, okay.
What is it then?
Huh?
What is it?
It's a selection of Bukhari.
No, so you don't have ijazah or no?
I mean, I do, but like, you know,
Khalas.
we have to like circle this part where it's like, did you listen to all the hadith or like some of them? You know?
Oh, you did?
You know, I went late both today, so I circled some. I was
Some.
like, yeah, you know, I was there for like half a minute. Sorry, what's your question?
It's good. It's good enough. Even if you heard some, that's fine. It's all the same. It's ijazahs.
And the other brother was really happy. I was happy for him. That was
It's like you're
It
on
was his first ijazah, so you can see like he was smiling from here to here. MashaAllah, I was like, man, I made him skip all that. I was like, look, guys, move. Come, Sheikh, please say for him. He was so happy. He's like, what do I do with this now? It's like, look, keep it.
It's like go teach now. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. Where do we leave off?
حدثنا قتيبة بن سعيد.
Okay. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى قال حدثنا قتيبة بن سعيد قال حدثنا الليث بن ابن الحاد عن سعد بن إبراهيم عن حميد بن عبد الرحمن عن عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من الكبائر شتم الرجل والديه. So here Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, he says that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that a man, from the major sins is a man cursing his parents. قالوا يا رسول الله وهل يشتم الرجل والديه? He said, is it possible that a man would curse his parents? قال نعم. He said, yes. يسب أبا الرجل فيسب أباه ويسب أمه فيسب أمه. He says that a man will curse another's father, so he will curse his father, or he curses another's mother, and therefore he will curse his mother. So over here, this is also a. Let's do the next isnad because it's the same isnad, or it's similar. قال وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة ومحمد بن المثنى وابن البشار جميعا عن محمد بن جعفر عن شعبة وتحويل الإسناد وحدثني محمد بن حاتم قال حدثنا يحيى بن سعيد قال حدثنا سفيان كلاهما عن سعد بن إبراهيم بهذا الإسناد مثله. So there's another supporting narrations for the previous hadith. So over here, from the major sins is a person cursing his parents. So what about the one that actually curses his parents? So over here, it was strange for them culturally to be like, well, who's going to curse their parents? Right? That was something that they found odd and something that they found strange. So here, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, because of what?
Because you curse someone's parents, you're cursing your own, basically.
Yeah, meaning what? Huh?
They'll curse you back.
Because you know, like you already know the reaction. So going into a place or going into a state that you know that what the person's reaction should be, don't even what?
Engage.
Don't even engage. Like don't even initiate. That's not something that's healthy because you know what the response is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He also talks about وَلَا يُسُبُّ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. So like don't curse those that worship other than Allah because they will what?
Curse.
Because they will curse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can we expand on this? Is there like an analogy that we can make to this? Yeah. So over here you have two specific texts, right? You have an ayah and a hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't curse other gods, otherwise they will curse Allah. And then you have this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ saying, don't curse, don't curse your parents. And they said, how is that, by you cursing another parents, that they will curse yours?
That actually brings up a question that I have.
Sure.
Because from
from what I read in the Quran, like you're supposed to kind of take the higher road, right? If someone
Mhm.
is terrible to you, you don't necessarily reciprocate with
Yes.
terribleness.
Good.
So if someone curses you
Mm-hmm.
or like really wants bad for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are they actually doing that to themselves also when they do that to you? Like, is that reciprocal thing?
So there are other hadith to show us that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that whoever curses his brother, and we took the hadith, right? And whoever accuses his brother of disbelief, then what? Then it returns back to one of them. But this idea of hurting others, right? This idea of like this verbal abuse and like hurting others, there's definitely accountability there, for sure, right? So the moment I say something about someone or I say something hurtful to someone, where does the accountability lie? It lies with me. It definitely lies with me. So is there that? Yeah, for sure, right? Absolutely, 100%. Like even Mu'adh, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, like, are we accountable for what we say? And the Prophet ﷺ, he responded what? He said, like, it's not except this that gets the people thrown into the hellfire. So the tongue is like, it's actually one of the most dangerous like tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, because with it we can actually say things that are very harmful, very hurtful, very hateful, and hurt others. It's something that we have to make sure that we're keeping in mind when we speak. So yes, there's absolute accountability. To what extent? It's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are other indications and other situations that really show us and talk about this too. Even when the Prophet ﷺ, when he talks about the issue of divorce, he says like, there's no joking in divorce, right? There's no joking in divorce. Why? Right. Definitely, it's a trust. But so what happens, unfortunately, with a lot of men is that they'll actually use divorce as a weapon against their wives. Say, oh, if you don't do this, I will divorce you, right? Or this is so the Prophet ﷺ, when he talks about divorce, even when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about divorce, right, a lot of it revolves around taqwa, right? Like if you're going to either tasrih, like either keep her or like leave her. Don't do this in between. And it's amazing how when you look at those discussions of like those in between discussions, you'll find that is actually a type of oppression, right? Where a person doesn't know where they are. And it's very unfortunate. Like I've had cases be like, where a husband will be like, oh, I'm going to divorce you, and then he'll just disappear. Like, what did you just leave behind? Like, is she married? Is she not married? Like, what's going on? So one of the lessons from this is playing with people's hearts. This is not permissible. Like you can't play with people's hearts. They're very fragile, right? Like our hearts generally are very fragile, and playing with them and like taking advantage of others, this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds everyone to account for. So like making statements like this, like even though you might feel you're justified, it doesn't make it right? Like we should make sure that we don't. Yes.
Yeah. So in this is saying like you are like at risk of committing a major sin.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's going to curse you.
Yes.
You curse someone else.
No, because you're knowingly instigating.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Right? Like when you're knowingly instigating someone, we say things all the time, like when we're talking, when we're speaking, and if somebody responds in a negative way, am I responsible for that? Right? If I said like if I said to you I like ice cream and he's lactose intolerant and he's like, how could you say that, you jerk? Like, what I mean? Like, so like what am I expecting that response? Like, did I instigate that response? No, right? So there's no accountability that's there. But in a situation like this, when I'm knowingly instigate someone, right? Like something that is especially something that's so close to somebody's heart, right? So this is something that's so close to someone's heart. Like it's and people do it on purpose, right? Because and even here, the Prophet ﷺ, he's talking about when you say it, you're doing what? Like you're knowingly trying to ignite this person, right? You're knowingly trying to get this person upset. So it's something to say about instigating, right? And how we should try to avoid instigating others and causing others harm, and like in really learning and understanding how to balance a lot of these relationships. The relationships are tough, right? They're not easy things. They're very challenging. but earning others' trusts and knowing how to engage with them, and making sure that we're not knowingly trying to hurt the other person. That's the best way to always deal with the people that are around us. But that in-between space, and this is something that, even I've learned myself that it's important to draw boundaries. When you draw boundaries, then you don't have that gray area, you don't have that gray space. And when you don't, and there's less chance of someone being taken advantage of in those spaces. When there's clarity, you can't take advantage. And when there's ambiguity, it's very easy to take advantage, it's very easy to oppress.
But you're saying about, so this one, because it's indirect, if I do it actually directly, it's actually more sinful.
So, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he says very directly what?
Yes.
Whoever curses his parents is from the major sins, right? Like from the major sins is cursing your parents. So over here, the companions are like, well, who does that? Meaning that the one who actually does that is what? Is it even worse, right? It's even worse. Like we should. Is it possible for a person to dislike his parents? Yeah, right. It's a relationship like all other relationships. Is it possible that a person is taken advantage of and oppressed by his parents or hurt in a different way? Yeah, absolutely. Those things happen. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is he saying here? Don't curse them. So if someone comes to me like, oh well, this parent was sexually abusive toward their kids, and unfortunately that happens. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our children. I mean, but in those situations, what, this person doesn't have a right to curse? How do we respond to that, and how do we deal with that?
That was kind of like, yeah, it's like they did something very terrible.
Yes. So
Taking the high road is, difficult.
yes, it is.
If you have the idea that, this is one of the things that I feel like I find a lot in scripture in the Quran and just in general with Allah's attributes is, if you take that high road, and even though it's difficult, like Allah is your avenger, Allah will find a way
Sure.
to make it okay.
So the question I have is, do I have to take the high road?
I don't know.
And it depends. Depends on the situation. If someone strikes me, I have every right to what? To strike him back. Is that the best decision? No, right. It's not.
If you're a woman running alone at night, like, yes.
Yeah, right. It's not. It's not the best decision, but I'm justified. Right. I'm justified in saying that, and I think some of this conversation also has to do with forgiveness, and kind of understanding what that is and what that entails and what that means, because if a person, and I'll use a lesser example, if someone steals money from me, I have choices now on how to react to that situation. One way I can forgive him, right? I can be like, it's okay, fellas. You stole the money, it's not a big deal. And next time he asks me for money, what can I do?
No.
Well, that's one avenue, right? Or another avenue is what? I can actually give it to him. And it depends, like the situation with Mistah, right? So you had a companion when Aisha radiallahu anha was being accused, right? When she was being accused, when Abu Bakr's nephew, right? Like his nephew or his cousin, I forgot what the relationship was. Mistah, yeah. So he used to give him a stipend, right? He used to give him a monthly stipend, and because he was like, okay, I need to help him out, and he used to give him a stipend. When he heard Mistah was from the people who was actually in supporting of or instigating, he stopped. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he revealed وَإِن تَعْفُوا وَإِن تَصْفَحُوا, right? Like if you forgive and you're, and you let go, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like, أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Like, do you not love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would forgive you? So not only did he return the stipend, he increased it. Like, subhanAllah. So you do have situations like that where people are like, they will go above and beyond for their forgiveness, but it's not for the sake of the person. It's for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's an option, right? That's definitely an option there. Then the second option is the one that you mentioned, which is probably what many of us would do, right? We'd forgive the person, but we would never, right? We would never give money to that individual. And what is the third option?
Seek legal means.
Okay. Even if I seek legal recompense, right? Even if I take this person to court and I go to try to get my money back, does that mean that I forgave that person?
No.
It depends.
Mm-hmm.
You
Okay.
may have forgiven you,
Yeah.
but you want to teach him a lesson and other people around.
Right. So you want to make sure that no one else is taken advantage of by this person. You'd be like, you know what, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like whatever happened in this world. And if I take that route, do I have a choice now to say I don't forgive him?
No,
No, I don't. Why?
because you already
I've already gotten my right. Right? I've already gotten my right. What if it's a right that cannot be returned? Right? So that's financial. What if it's a right that cannot be returned? Somebody, he defamed me, right? He said something about me that was untrue, and he does not ask forgiveness from me for that. He accused me of stealing, for example. He accuses me of stealing. There's no exchange of goods here that happened, right? He didn't take anything from me. And now that he's accused me of stealing, and I was like, bro, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you're lying, and this and that. He's like, no, you stole. And that's it. And that is the extent of the relationship. And I have similar choices in front of me. I can what?
forgive.
I can forgive him. Or I can what?
Hold him accountable in front
I can hold him accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's a condition with that too. If I hold somebody to account in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what can I not do? I can't dangle it in front of them. So let's say he comes and he seeks forgiveness from me, and he's like, listen, I'm not in a position, I don't think I can forgive you. And that's fine, right? Like, I have that prerogative and I own my forgiveness.
Now you're being the oppressor.
Not necessarily, no. If someone comes to me and is like, hey, listen, forgive me for this, I was like, I'm sorry, okay, type. I can say something like that. Rape. No. Let me give some more examples, right? Rape, murder. A person murders your child. Is like, please forgive me. Like, I'm sorry, I can't. Right? Like, my heart is just not allowing it. Like, these simple examples of accusing of these are, I think they're less consequence, and someone might be like, oh, that's easy, and that's fine. Like, okay, let's escalate it a little bit. It's like, okay, this person murdered your child, and he's coming and he's seeking your forgiveness. And may Allah protect us and our families. It's like, okay, well, and I'm saying, no, I'm going to hold you account in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, what you did to me was devastating. But what I can't do is what you're saying. Can I go and remind this person, like, remember you killed my son? Why? Why can't I do that?
That's what I mean.
Because now I'm oppressing him. If I've promised to leave it up to Allah, then I really have to what? Leave it to Allah. That Allah will take account of him and Allah will take care of him. And I have to walk away. And these are different ways. Like, if you actually think about it, it's like, okay, well, why not respond, and why not do this, or why not, like, even the person who's hurt me, why give that person time? Why give that person attention? Like, they're not deserving of it. And many times, the person who hurt or oppressed, how much space are we taking in that person's mind? It's nothing. He probably forgot about it. He probably steals your money or hurt you or didn't. Like, he just continued on with his life. He doesn't care about you. So why am I giving him, rent-free space in my head? Right? Like, I shouldn't. Why should I give him that honor or give her that honor? That's not something that I should do. I should go forward. I should live my life, and I should try to keep my heart as light as possible. And it is challenging. Right? It's not easy. Even with forgiveness, is forgiveness like a switch? Mm-hmm. Like, someone comes to me like, forgive me, you're like, yes, done. Ding. Like, right? When that happens? That happens, and it's not natural. It's usually when people come and force you, right? Like, people they'll try to blackmail you. It's like, Allah says, "Allah tuhibbuna yaghfirullahu lakum." Like, do you not love that Allah forgives, and you be forgiving? And begrudgingly, you'll say what? Okay. He's like, okay, fine. But do you really believe that and feel that? No. It's part of this is really being learning to be honest with ourselves and understanding what that means and what that entails. But so I think that that forgiveness aspect is something that's really important, and understanding that the option not to forgive is a real option, not just a theoretical one. I think that's important. Everybody owns their own forgiveness, but if you do take that option, like I said, there are conditions to that. You can't go remember when you did this? It's like, bro, you already said you left it up to Allah. Either forgive him or not. Because now you're in that in between space, and we said that whenever you fall into that space, you're always going to oppress the other person. So instead of you being oppressed, you are now the oppressor. to spend more time with the hadith next time. Yeah, because it's about arrogance. Yeah, no, I want to spend some time with that. Yeah, hold on.
Question on like what the hadith means. Like, what does it mean? What does that mean?
Oh, that's a good question. The curse is to like belittle, right? I would say like just in summary, that's what that entails. Like it's to belittle them, or speak of them in like a disrespectful way. But are there things that happens? Like, so for example, if somebody's father's a thief and somebody says like, oh, well, what about your dad? It's like, yeah, he's a thief. Like, am I cursing him? No, it's just a statement of fact, right? Which is different versus saying like, oh, he's stupid, right? That any type of like belittlement would fall under this.
Is it still discouraged someone's father?
You shouldn't talk about your parents, right? Just in general, it's usually not a good idea unless like there are situations where it's okay, right? And so what situations would you guys imagine that's okay?
Justification.
I'm sorry, yeah, like when you're asked, like if you're brought forward to be a character test, like as a character witness toward, it's like, well, no, like he does drugs and he does, he drinks and he's abusive, et cetera, et cetera. In those situations, you have to be very honest and very straightforward. What other situations? Well, like marriage also, right? So if somebody's asking to, like, for their hand, and let's say, like, your father's getting married, your mother passed away, and someone's like, hey, tell me about your dad. It's like, yeah, he's not that good a guy. Like, so you have to be honest in those situations. Other situations, like if I myself am struggling, right? Like if I have a struggling relationship with my father or my mother, and I'm going to someone to learn to figure out how to navigate that, I have to be what? I have to be honest, right? I have to be honest and be like, okay, well, this is a situation, and he's like this, et cetera, et cetera. Because the intention is not to focus on him as a person. It's to focus on how you can navigate that, or when other people are involved. Does that make sense? Yeah, sure.
How would you like recommend, like let's say you want to like advise your parents to like pray, or like let's say like they're not doing things that
Don't.
like someone like
Just don't.
don't advise your parents.
No, in general, it's not a good idea.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not. There's not even more to that, but like
Yeah.
that's the dispensation for children.
So the thing is, like, parents are responsible for their children, and the other way around, and only in particular situations. So, like, when am I responsible for my father? I'm responsible for my father, la samahullah, in case he falls into poverty. Right? This is ijma'. Right? There's an agreement of all the fuqaha that this is a situation for that. Someone might respond as like, okay, well, what if he's elderly? I was like, well, I'm not a nurse. Right? Like I have to work too. Like I have a family I have to care for as well. It's like, does it make sense to put the entire physical burden on one person? Like I can help, I can step in, I can, what I mean? Like there are elements, and I'm not saying this because I think we should, like, oh no, this is the relationship and you need to be cold. No, I mean, people I think in general are very kind, like as a whole. So we should do the best that we can to help our parents. But at the end of the day, it's like, I think that's more of a discussion on like, what is the role of a parent, and like, what is the nature of that relationship. Even with parents, it's like, it's not an easy conversation because of the cultural expectations that are there. But if I asked you, okay, well, like, who is the best person to take care of you when you're elderly? You when you were young, right? Like you probably should have set up a 401k, and you probably should have made sure you were healthy and you were eating healthy, and right? Because the longer a parent is financially and physically independent, who benefits the most? Right? Like he definitely benefits, and the children also benefit. Like one of the things that I'm actually very happy with my parents about is the fact that they were like, alhamdulillah, they're financially and they're like physically independent. And because of their independence, I was able to go and study, right? I was able to seek knowledge. I was able to get a job. I was like, there's a lot of stuff you can do when your parents have that independence. And not just that, and may Allah preserve and protect all of us. What if we get to an age and I start recognizing that my health is deteriorating and I need help, and I check myself into an old folks home? How will the family deal with that? Will there be any resentment? No. Right? Because I made that decision independently, versus a child putting his father or mother into an old folks home. What happens then? There's resentment on both sides. Like, how could you? Like, how could you put me into this space? And the child is like, man, I can't take care of you. Like, it's not fair you put me in this position. Right? And I think that's important. And I think there's like this huge negative perception of like, even the old folks culture and what that is. Do you guys even know like what percentage of elderly in the United States, are in old folks home? 5%. Like Americans are not as evil as we try to make them out to be. It's five. And from that 5%, 2 to 3% are actually medically incapable, meaning that they actually need medical services. So like even from that percentage, like 2 or 3% of them are they're generally healthy. So I mean, it is what it is. Allah protect and preserve us all. Yeah.
In the Hadith, like for a curse, what word is used in Arabic?
Sub, right?
Because usually, like I feel like even when it's an actual curse, like la'na, which is way different, it's
That's-
translated the same, but I don't think
No,
it should be.
that's not a good way to translate it. Yeah, because la'an is like one is cursing, one is invoking Allah's curse, right? So that I would say that's the difference between the two. So la'an is invoking Allah's curse, and sub is to curse.
I think it's more common for parents to curse their children in that case.
I mean,
Both cases actually.
I mean, alhamdulillah. This is another thing. Like, okay, even if your parents curse you, right, unjustly, I can't think of a justification. But anyway, so like if your parents do curse you, it's actually a hasana for you, right? It's actually a hasana. It's actually a good deed for you. Don't encourage it, right? That's never a good. Right? That's never a good idea, right? It's like, whoops, I dropped all my food. Like, I'm trying to get more hasanat. But yeah, like if it's uncalled for, I think that's a better way of saying it. If it's uncalled for, then it is written as a good deed for you. I think some people walk around with like that spiritual guilt that when their parents like curse them, it's like I try to make them happy and I try to do this and they still curse me and they still put me down. No, it's okay. In that situation, take solace that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala will turn, even if it's a dua against you, the dua will actually be for you. Any other questions? Yes.
There's a little bit of you were giving an example earlier of that the Sahaba were reacting to like who would do that.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of like cultural context kind of like loaded in there.
Yeah.
And the reason I think of it is like the kind of thing that would get a reaction, like in an argument, like in our current times, like maybe that wouldn't be the first thing, like insulting someone.
Sure.
Like maybe something else.
Yeah.
So I guess like, is there a broader implication here, or is it very?
So I think specifically that's where it starts, but I think that you can make an analogy on this. I'm trying to think of what's a good example of how we instigate today. Sometimes making fun of certain celebrities, right? Like people's hearts are attached to. So basically, like, don't insult anyone whose people's heart are attached to that person. Don't insult Biden. You know what I mean? No. So, like if a person's heart is attached to that person, don't insult that person who their heart is attached to, right? So I think that's probably a good way to kind of to extrapolate and to make sure that we don't fall into something similar. Otherwise, man, it's just there's no productive conversation, right? It's just emotions at that point. Any other questions? No. See you guys next week, inshallah.